Welcome, everybody, to another installment of Garden Party, or your virtual series from the Southern California News Group, created to give you tips, tricks, and insights into getting the most joy and productivity out of your gardening experience, and also help you find a community of like-minded green thumbs, or maybe wannabe green thumbs. I'm Sam Dunn, the senior editor for premium content here at the Southern California News Group, and I want to say thank you to our Reader Reward subscribers, and really to all of you for supporting our programs and our journalism. By the way, if you are a Reader Reward subscriber attending today, you're automatically entered to win a $100 gift card to Home Depot to help you with your gardening goals. And listen, if you're not a subscriber yet, why aren't you a subscriber? Please support local journalism and the things going on in your community. Go to scng.com/subscribe to find your local paper, and please join us as a regular reader. Let me remind you of a few things before we get started. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar on your screen. We know you're going to have questions. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. But certainly, if you want to make comments, use the chat feature found on your Zoom toolbar right down there at the bottom as well. Keep in mind you'll have slides to refer to as you go. And don't worry, you're not going to miss a thing, because this session is videotaped and a link is going to be sent to you so you can share it or just revisit some of your favorite moments. It's also posted at scng.com/virtual events, and that's where you can find all of our past virtual shows, as well as see what's upcoming. Now, here's our longtime gardening columnist, Master Gardener Laura Simpson, with today's presentation. Welcome, Laura. I'll let you get to it.
Hi, how's it going? Okay,
Good. I'll let you get to it.
do share screen here and share so we can see pretty pictures. Can we see the pretty pictures?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in or signing on and listening to me go on about citrus. So that's one of the things about living in California, is we can actually grow citrus here in Florida and Arizona and some parts of Texas. You can grow citrus, but for the most part, you have to be in a frost free or very mild climate to be successful in growing citrus. Just as a heads up. So let's see. Oh no. Whoa, wait a minute. Where am I? It dropped me to the bottom of my presentation here. I don't have my mouse with me, that's why. Okay. All the way up to the top here. So first I'm going to go over what kind, the different kinds of citrus that are really accessible to homeowners. There's some different varieties. There's some really weird stuff like citron, and just there's also some rootstock type citrus trees, but I'm not going to really go into those just because nobody really grows this. Well, citron some people do, but it's kind of not a real commonly grown fruit. Then we'll go into soil requirements and sunlight, and it really likes sunlight. Water, of course, and then frost protection, which is kind of an issue in some areas. Where we live, we have a number of citrus trees, and we do get frost here, but we take advantage of some microclimate type situations. So,
Hey, Laura, real quick, let me interrupt you. You're not in slideshow mode.
oh shoot.
Just wanted to let you know.
Okay, where am I? Sort of.
We can see the slide, but
Oh no, so reading view. There we go.
There we go.
Okay,
Yep.
so much
Looks
bigger.
good.
Okay.
Right.
We don't want to have spoilers here. So anyway, of course, the most common varieties for home growers are orange, lemon, lime, tangerine, grapefruit, and kumquat. So those are the big ones, of course. There's also like mandarin quat, limequat, sorts of different kinds of quats. So we're going to go with start with orange, because that's everyone's favorite, it seems. So oranges, they come in actually a number of different colors and varieties. These are the ones that we've grown, that we've had luck with. There's so many more though that limit yourself to these, but these are the ones that we've had luck with in the Inland Empire. So Valencia, which is your it's a seedless orange. It's a really nice, very sweet juice orange. Really, really productive. It does well here. Moral Blood Orange. This actually, it seems to have fallen out of favor commercially. I think it's probably the name. They probably should have made it a different name or something. But it is a very beautiful, beautiful fruit. It has this almost like just deep raspberry red flesh, really good flavor. I kind of think it tastes like a little bit like raspberries, personally, and it is quite productive. The outside rind is also kind of blushed with a dark red, so it looks kind of odd. Lane's Late, these produce late in the season, but they are a good quality. So it's something that we get these come in like after everything else is done producing. So like late in the spring. Tarraco Blood, which is not quite as red as the Moral Blood Orange, kind of a red orange, red fading into orange. Really nice flavor as well. I have seen those sold at Costco, so hopefully, hopefully you'll see more of those. Washington Navel, of course, is a very popular standard variety. It's navel orange. It just has a few seeds, and it's also good for fresh eating. Lemons, okay, so lemons are a little bit more, they're on the more frost sensitive side of things. Oranges are kind of in between. Lemons are a little bit more frost sensitive. If you're kind of on the edge, you may not have success with lemons, but you could try just to know that they are a little bit more frost sensitive. So we have Eureka, which is huge. They're like about this, they can be about the size of a grapefruit. They're just kind of freakishly large, but still pretty good. Meyer, beautiful lemon. It's usually has like a fairly smooth rind, smooth skin, bright, gorgeous, almost like a yellowish orange almost. The orange, the yellow is very intense. It's rather quite sweet, and it's less acidic than most oranges. Those are the ones, if you are into Moroccan or Middle Eastern cooking or using salt preserved lemons, the Meyer lemon is what they would use that for. Lisbon, those are like called the Mick lemon. It's kind of, this is the one that you see in the supermarkets basically. So it's a little smaller, very common variety. And then pink lemonade, which is this one here that I have pictured. It's really a beautiful tree. The leaves are actually variegated as well. They have like little white streaks on the leaves, and the fruit you can see here is streaked with a green, and it's pink inside. Not very acidic as well. I like it. If you're going to make lemonade, cut back on the sugar that you add because it will be too sweet. It's really pretty. It looks nice in like a glass of ice water or lemonade. Very excuse me, very pretty. Lime, okay, these are much more excuse me, limes are much more frost sensitive than even lemons. So key lime is very frost tender. They're grown in the Florida Keys, so you can imagine they really kind of like a more tropical environment. Surprisingly, we were able to get one to grow here, but we have it kind of tucked in between the house and the wall, and I don't know why he bought it. We hardly use it. The fruit is really, really small. It's smaller than the size of a ping pong ball. Very frost tender. Really pain in the butt to squeeze for juice. So if you're going to make a key lime pie, you can use regular limes. You don't have to go out of your way to buy a key lime. Bear's lime, these are very, very popular here. They look almost like lemons because they have the yellow rind when they're mature. But when you cut it open, it is the pale green inside. Those are also a very good producer for us. Persian is the one that's small. It's the supermarket variety. So you may see those around. And then Kefir lime. which is, it's a lime, but it's kind of weird. It has the fruit kind of looks like a brain. It's got these weird ridges and things on them. It looks like a little green brain, and it's probably about the size of a ping pong ball. But those are grown for the leaves, and this pictured here is a kefir lime. You can tell it's a kefir lime because of the leaves are kind of two-part leaves, and they use it in Thai cooking. You would pick the leaf and tear it and put it into broth and then pull it out, kind of like you would do for a bay leaf sort of deal. But it has a really nice fragrance to it. Tangerines, okay. These, if you're going to start with citrus, I would recommend tangerines. These are a little tougher. They do tolerate a little bit more frost. I mean, we're talking maybe 30 degrees or so. So tangerines, much easier to grow. So there's many different kinds of tangerines. There's Satsuma, they're small, seedless, real easy to peel and extremely productive. The tree will be loaded with fruit. The kishu, also very small fruit, easy to peel. This one is not going to be commercially available as a fruit, except maybe at a farmer's market, because the fruit has to be clipped from the tree. You can't just pick it, because if you pick it, it tears the top of the skin. And, so if you pick it, you should eat it right away. Because if you tear that skin away, it's going to dry out, and it's not easy to harvest. And so you're not going to see these in the supermarket, but they are absolutely delicious. And my kids really love these, especially when they're little, because they're small and the little fingers could get in there and peel it, and it didn't have seeds. So it was real popular with my kids, still is popular with my kids. And then a gold nugget, these are bigger. You'll see them frequently. They'll have kind of bumpy skin, a little bit kind of loose skinned as well. And it holds well on the tree, a little bit better than the other citruses do. Okay, grapefruit. So grapefruit is, of course, many different kinds as well. Grapefruit's more on the, it's kind of in the middle there with oranges as far as frost tolerance. And I don't mean like 0 degrees. I mean like I said, 30 degrees or so. So cocktail grapefruit, thin rind. I think that, I'm not sure if this one here in the corner is a cocktail, but it has many seeds. It's real sweet, and it's good for juicing, because then you don't have to deal with the seeds. You just kind of run it through a filter. And the Oro Blanco is a white grapefruit crossed with a pomelo. That's also really quite sweet. Ours have absolutely no bitterness whatsoever to them. And those are absolutely delicious as well. Valentine is a new variety. We managed to grab a Valentine tree. Sorry, I've got my computer set up on my cat tree, and my cat's jumping down to go do something. So Valentine is red fleshed. It ripens in February. It's a new variety. When you cut it in half, sometimes the flesh kind of looks like the shape of a heart. It's kind of cute, but it's really, really good. So if you can find one of those, grab one. Kumquats. These also, along with tangerines, are quite frost tolerant. So they're super, super productive. So Nagami, most popular variety in the United States. It's kind of oval. And Miawa is another one. It's round. They both have edible rind, where the rind is actually kind of sweet. And then when you bite into it, you get like the juice. It's whoa, it's really tart inside, but strangely addicting. It's good for fresh eating. I can't do too many. My mouth will turn inside out. But my husband loves these things, and they're good for, people make marmalade out of them. They do have kind of a lot of seeds in them for the size of them. And let's see. So let's get on to soil. So citrus, of course, likes sandy loam. It needs that good drainage. And don't plant a citrus tree in the lawn. They don't compete with grass roots very well. Grass roots are very fibrous and dense, and citrus roots are not. So when you put water on, the grass is going to suck up the water. If you put fertilizer on, the grass is the grass is just, it's a piggy plant, so to speak. So if you do plant a citrus, make sure that you keep an area clear of grass where the citrus roots are. Your tree will be a lot happier. Sunlight. They need sunlight big time. So full sun. If you notice with citrus trees, they have kind of, their leaves are kind of thick and they have a waxy feel to them. They're very drought tolerant as far as they're heat tolerant. They actually like the heat, but they do need 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, full sun per day. So you'll notice when we have these extreme heat waves and everything else is kind of sad and wilty, and the citrus will be like right up there. They're just like really happy. So they do tolerate that heat. So it's a good plant if you live in the desert as well. So watering, this is a big thing, it seems, with a lot of people, that you love your tree so much, so you water it and water it. And the thing is sometimes, especially homeowners, we don't have very good soil that doesn't drain real freely. So you have to be very careful about don't ever overwater it. I like the drip irrigation, particularly for trees, because you can move it. You can move that drip line out as the tree's growing. And so you'll see, like in this diagram here, you'll see the roots reach out as far as the canopy of the tree. And that the root system, where the roots reach, that's actually called the drip line. The drip line is at the edge of the canopy. And so when you're putting a drip line, you're putting a drip irrigation, and you want to make sure that you cover that drip line, because you want to encourage those roots to kind of spread. They're very dense roots. If you try to plant something underneath a citrus tree, it just is not going to work. There are very dense roots right at the surface. We have pots that we have like herbs and things, flowers. So we have these big clay pots. We put them underneath the citrus tree where they're kind of shaded from the intense sun. And when we water the pots, we'll use like Osmocote as fertilizer in the pots for whatever we're growing in there. When we water it, it drains and feeds the citrus tree as well. But then the plants in the pots have room for roots, as opposed to like trying to put it in the ground. Just not going to work. You want to let the soil dry a little bit between watering. You don't want it to get, it's kind of this Goldilocks watering. You don't want it to stay soggy, but you don't want it to get absolutely bone dry. You want it to drain a little bit before you water it again. So that it's kind of hard to describe. It's like you kind of know when if you aren't sure if your tree's roots are soggy or not, you can dig down a little bit with a hand trowel and see if it's muddy, like a few inches below the surface of the soil. Because I know with some soils, it'll dry out and form a crust on the top, but then underneath it's muddy. And so using the hand trowel and just feeling down there really is the best way. Some people use like a soil core sample thing. If you have one of those, that would be helpful too. But just know that the surface may be deceptive. So frost protection, this is a big one. Particularly with new trees, they're going to be very susceptible to frost, partly because they're just short. They're like close to the ground where the cold air is. Once they get up high, then they're a little bit more, they're more resistant to the cold air. When you're locating your tree, you want to plant it near a south or west facing wall. What happens there is that wall, especially if it's a concrete block wall or stucco wall, because okay, think about it. When you go, especially in the summertime, when the sun is beating onto that south or west facing wall all day, if you go out at night, like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and you go up to that wall and feel it, you'll feel that it's still radiating heat. It will radiate heat for a long time. This actually like buys you some frost protection. So that is, that's one thing that you want to be aware of, is those little microclimates that you have in your yard. So wrapping it in burlap is probably the best way if you're going to cover your trees to protect from frost. I like burlap. It comes in big long sheets, so you can kind of wrap it around. You can wrap it around young trees at least, and it's it's easy to take off because you don't want to keep it wrapped in burlap all winter long. You want to wrap it when you're getting a frost warning. You want to wrap it, but then when for the rest of the time you want to keep it exposed to sunlight, obviously. So the burlap's nice, and it doesn't look as cheesy as like an old sheet, although that'll work, I guess. You can use heat sinks as well, like boulders, or when our trees were really young, we bought trees and they were like 3 feet tall. So what we did is we got some buckets of water, like those Home Depot 5-gallon buckets. We filled them up with water and set those underneath the tree. And at the time we had young kids, so in the morning we had to dump all the water out because that's a hazard to little kids. But it did help as far as acting as a heat sink. Some people use Christmas lights. If you have the old-fashioned Christmas lights that get warm, not the LEDs, but I guess the incandescent lights, you can use those as well. That gives you a little bit of protection from frost. I mean, if it gets to be 0 degrees, it's not going to work. But when you're on the edge, you can use these things to protect your trees. So selecting your tree and planting, is bigger really better? Not really. You probably want to go with something you can easily handle. Look over site selection, like where to plant your tree, where to buy it. That's important too, particularly for citrus, and I'll tell you why. And then actually putting it in the ground. So pot size, really important. You don't want to. I hate those box trees, but even like these the bigger the pot is, more likely it is that tree's been in a pot for too long and it gets root bound. So this is, as far as an example of really bad, really badly root bound plant. I mean, you can see how the roots, when they hit the edge, when they grow out and they hit the edge of the pot, they'll curl, they'll start to grow in a circular fashion. And once they start that process, you can't really get them out of that. So the roots will keep growing, even if they pop it out and put it in a bigger pot, those roots are still on that circular growth pattern. So what you'll see is that this tree here, if this person was going to plant this tree, this tree would not last very long because the roots are strangling the trunk of the tree. The trunk is going to get, if it actually grows, the trunk's going to get bigger, but then the roots are going to get bigger as well, and they're going to strangle the tree. You see this a lot with landscape trees, box trees that the city plants, and they put them in the ground, and then you'll see like a girdling root. What'll happen is half the tree will be dead because that girdling root has pressed against the trunk and stopped all the sap from reaching the top of the tree. So half the tree will be dead, and a lot of times that's the cause of it. So better to go with like a 5 or 10 gallon tree. They actually do catch up. They're easier to handle as well. You're less likely to get that root bound thing, and you're less likely to hurt your back as well. So site selection, you want to have it, you don't want to crowd it, you want to give it enough room to grow because they do kind of spread out. It's best to put it near a heat sink, like a wall fence pool or a pond or boulders. In this picture, this is a great example of a good tree location. From what I can see, is that there's a wall or a fence behind it. It's got room to grow. So, and it's also has boulders underneath it, which those are heat sinks. They're going to absorb sunlight and radiate back at night. Also, there's a patio there. And so this is a really good example of a good tree location. You want to be able to reach the fruit. Try to make it so it's not growing over your neighbor's fence or over a fence that's at the top of a big tall slope or something. You want to be able to reach your fruit because that's the whole point of growing it, right? Keep away from walkways because they really have some mean thorns. And if you're motivated, you can clip the thorns off and the thorns won't grow back, but there's a lot of thorns to clip. It's easier just to keep it away from a walkway or something. Where to buy? So you only want to buy citrus, especially citrus, only from reputable sources. Go to a regular nursery or garden center. Don't buy like at the swap meet or off of Craigslist or something, because they need to be inspected for diseases and pests. And be conscientious of your quarantine boundaries. You can look up online if you're subject to a quarantine, because a lot of times they don't want you to move plant material outside, certain plant material. They don't want you to move it outside of a quarantine area. And there's some really nasty diseases that have made their way into California that are citrus greening disease being one, which I'll talk about in a few slides here. So when you go to plant it, dig a hole like twice the diameter of the pot. You want twice as big as the size of the pot. Then gently tip it out of the pot and support the root ball. Don't handle your tree like this in the picture where you're grasping it by the trunk and then pulling it out of the pot, because you're going to damage a lot of roots that way. Avocados, you really don't want to do that. I mean, you can kill an avocado tree if you do that. But in general, you don't want to handle a tree that way. You want to tip it out on the side and like gently shake it out of the pot. And then when you put it in the ground, make sure you spread, kind of like pull the roots away and spread them. If there's one really long root, you may want to trim it. Don't bury the crown, which is where the tree and the soil meet. You want to make sure that that is up above ground. And you might want to be careful about when you put it in the ground. You want to set it in so it's kind of sitting a little high up, because as you water it and tamp the soil down, that tree may sink. So be careful not to bury the crown that way. Then once it's watered, once it's in the ground, you want to water it real thoroughly and make sure there's no little pockets of air in there. Make sure there's no grass within 3 feet of the trunk. Also, another reason to keep grass away from the trunk of your tree is that the landscapers come around with a weed whacker, and a lot of them aren't very careful, and they can girdle your tree with a weed whacker. So it's better to keep the grass away from the trunk. And if you're going to mulch, which is always a good idea, but you don't want that mulch touching the base of the trunk either, because that can encourage fungus growth there. I know all these rules, right? So, maintenance. Reason this photo gives me anxiety. So you're never going to have a citrus this big unless there's like, I think there's one rootstock that makes some growth 40 feet tall. We're not doing that. So with maintenance, you want fertilizing, water, pruning, and harvesting. So let's go with fertilizer. So there's also, if you look under citrus, like there's all sorts of nutrient deficiencies that citrus is susceptible to. There's manganese deficiency, potassium deficiency, phosphorus deficiency, and there's different symptoms for each one of these. The main thing to know is that you want to give it citrus avocado fertilizer that has all those micronutrients, because citrus does have some nutrient requirements. They're a little bit more sensitive to micronutrient deficiencies. So buying that citrus avocado fertilizer is your best bet. You can do either a February, May, August, October schedule, or January, May, and June. The main thing is you want to avoid fertilizing while it's still susceptible to frost. So my preference where we are, our last frost date is March 15th. And so late February is probably okay, but you don't want to go with like November, December. because that's when you're right before you're going to get frost. And the reason is that fertilizing is going to encourage tender new growth, and it's going to put out this tender new leaves. And if it gets frost, those leaves are going to die, and that plant spent all that energy putting out new leaves that are now not going to help it. So it's too much of a stress on the plant. So in Southern California, we do have alkaline soil here. If you have if your tree's looking yellow, the leaves are looking yellow and kind of sad, and it's not really growing that well, it may need iron as well. The alkaline soil will bind up iron and make it not available to the plant roots. So if you have, I think I go over this later, but if you do have persistent chlorosis or yellowing of the leaves and it's not due to overwatering, you think it's a nutrient deficiency, go ahead and give it some ironite. It couldn't hurt, and it may help, because it may be that the plant's getting enough nitrogen, but it also needs iron to make chlorophyll. So something to remember. Also, don't get ironite on your sidewalk or your concrete driveway, because it will leave little rust spots. Happened to my neighbor. Those rust spots, it was 15 years ago, those rust spots are still there. So be careful with it when you sprinkle it around. So watering, consistency is probably the most important thing. You don't want to give it a whole ton of water and then neglect it and then go, oh shoot, I forgot to water, and then water it. You want to, it's probably best to have it like some sort of irrigation timer. Adjust those drip lines as needed. So this one here, you can see it's around the base of the tree, but they probably should move it further out, so it's covering the roots that are growing outward from the tree. One thing that helps, especially for new trees, is making a little watering basin, which is kind of like a donut shape. You're like a ridge of soil. So you have a little basin, so you can fill it with water, and then it percolates down, and that helps, especially for newly planted trees. Check your soil below the surface. You can't tell from top whether it's moist underneath. Mulch with organic matter. Don't use like gravel or anything. Use actual bark or something. And whatever you do, don't overwater. The tree can, a lot of times it can recover from underwatering, but overwatering, if it starts the process of root rot, it may not. It's less likely to recover from that. So don't love your tree to death. So pruning, I have a question about that. So pruning in general, what's nice about citrus is that you really don't have to prune them that much. They come on the they're grafted. So all the citrus you're going to find in the stores are grafted semi-dwarf trees, which means they stay short for the most part. So for any kind of pruning, what you'll want to do is remove any dead branches, because they just like don't look good. Plus they're not doing your tree any good. Also, any branches that are rubbing, if you have branches that are rubbing against each other, take one of those out, because the rubbing can open up the tree to disease entry. Remove water sprouts and suckers. So here on this tree, you can see the water sprouts are, they're branches, but they're like suckers, but they grow, they usually stay green, and they grow really fast, just straight up through the tree. And you won't see any flowers. You'll see some leaves, but it's a very fast growing branch that grows from the base of the tree or from the middle of the tree, and it grows just basically straight up, and it stays green. I say you'll know it when you see it. It's just this weird looking branch, and you want to remove those guys. They also have a tendency to come out below the graft as well. So like with a citrus tree, you should be able to tell where the graft is. It's kind of like a cuff or like a bump, and then sometimes suckers will grow out from below that. You want to trim those away, because that's the rootstock, and those will only remove nutrients from the productive part of the tree. So that's probably the most important thing as far as pruning, is to get rid of those. This poor tree here, it has a bunch of water sprouts, and it also has some branches that are emerging from below the graft. So part of this tree is not going to give you very good fruit, and it's probably going to weaken the tree, because the rootstock is going to take the branch coming out of the rootstock is going to take the nutrients away from the rest of the tree. So when you see those coming out from below the graft, you do want to clip those off just right at the tree. They rarely need any kind of shaping. Not like like a peach tree or an apple tree or something where you're constantly clipping it and stuff. You really don't need to shape these too much. We give ours a haircut just to keep them a little bit shorter, because they do want to kind of reach for the sky, but you really don't have to. Also with citrus trees, they rarely, the branches don't break very easily. The wood is flexible. And also, if you look at the way the tree, when it's bearing fruit, it's got a symmetry to it. So it's kind of a cantilever design. So rarely do citrus branches break. But if you're afraid that one of the branches is going to break, if it looks like it's like, oh, I'm going to lose this whole branch, well, go ahead and clip some fruit off of it to really relieve it. But for the most part, it's not as essential as like thinning fruit on, say, a peach tree. And okay, I went through remove growth below the graft, so that's good. Okay, so harvesting, the fun part. So harvesting can vary according to your weather. If you have like a cool spring, you may have a later harvest date. So I'm sure, I think Dave Wilson Nursery has the fruit ripening chart, and it will tell you when the fruit's ready to pick. But Dave Wilson Nursery is in the Central Valley. So in Southern California, we're probably about 2 weeks behind them. So something to keep in mind. The fruit color will intensify. It gets really pretty. And you'll start to see more pest pressure. That's when the squirrels show up. Jerks. So also sometimes some neighbors will show up and steal the fruit too. But you'll see more squirrels and stuff that are going to start taking interest in your fruit because getting pretty, and that's one of the signs that it's ready to steal. Most fruit, well, it depends if you have marauding squirrels, but most fruit can actually stay on the tree for quite a while, as opposed to, say, plums or nectarines or figs, where you do have to pick them kind of promptly, or else the softer fruit needs to be picked pretty promptly. Citrus, it's more of a relaxed harvest time. And when the fruit starts to drop, it's definitely time to harvest. So something to think about there. Sad looking tree. This isn't my tree, but so I'm sure many of you have trees that look like this. So troubleshooting, some of the more common issues that you'll see with a sad looking tree is going to be water stress, where you're not watering it regularly, watering it too much, and then going a long time without watering, or it's sitting in water. Could be any number of those things. Nutrient deficiencies also they're susceptible to that. Pests, there's a few. Citrus doesn't really get a whole lot of pests, but the ones they get are kind of doozies. There's also diseases and frost damage. Of course, you can tell because usually the leaves will look sad after a cold night. So with water stress, overall, this is like the number one cause of any kind of plant problems. House plants, garden plants, any kind of plants. The overwatering, underwatering, watering irregularly, it's the number one thing you should look at first, because oftentimes it's easy to fix. Your irrigation system may be plugged up or malfunctioning or something, or the rats may have chewed your irrigation system, so there's that. Check your soil for drainage, make sure that it's not sitting in water because nobody likes wet feet. Um, adjust your watering schedule with the seasons. Of course, like in the winter when we get rain, you're probably not going to have to water it a lot. I mean, if we're getting like rain every couple days, that's pretty cool. Just turn the irrigation off. But then remember to turn it back on. When you're getting a heat wave, you want to give it a little bit more water before the heat wave comes and make sure it gets a good drink during the heat wave because it needs it. So in general, what you'll see with a lack of water, the trees are gonna the um the leaves are gonna curl. They can turn brown and dry, obviously, but they'll also get like translucent spots in them. And that's where the plant tissue kind of collapses on itself and you have like a thin spot in the leaves. If you see those, that may be due to water stress. And then overwatering, particularly if you overwater um, after a water stress, you'll see wilting and yellow leaves and also split fruit like this here. And that's just because it sucks up as much water and then the fruit takes in the water and splits open. So nutrient deficiencies. Um, so when you have a new tree, you want to fertilize it probably more like 3 times per growing season, depending on where you are. Maybe 4. It's better to under fertilize than to over fertilize. So, the citrus food comes in granules. Just follow the directions on there. Fertilizer, especially you want to do during the first 4 years after you planted the tree. So, because it's going through a big growth spurt and it needs all the help it can get. And like I said, the citrus fertilizer, it's worth buying that special fertilizer it's citrus avocado fertilizer. It's worth buying because that covers all those micronutrients. So what you'll see is if it's a nutrient deficiency, what you'll see is like a lack of growth or symmetric leaf discoloration, like you see here in this photograph. So those leaves are yellowing, but it's pretty symmetrical. Like it's the same on both sides. It's not like one side is yellow and the other side isn't. That's important to know. Oh, and the persistent chlorosis, which is yellowing of the leaves, may indicate that iron deficiency. So if you're fertilized with citrus fertilizer and it doesn't seem to be doing the trick, you may want to give it some ironite. So pests, my ladybugs. So these are the most common pests that we see on citrus. So leaf miners, of course, leaf miners will affect tomatoes as well, but there's citrus leaf miners. Aphids at scale, which is what you see here, mealybugs, psyllids, and then of course the vertebrate pests, which everyone just loves those squirrels, right? So leaf miners, I think everyone's seen these if you have citrus. These are pests that are inside the leaf. The little miner guy, he's inside the leaf. So you can't spray for him. If you have a mild case, if there's only a few leaves, then just, give your plant a little bit extra fertilizer and it'll be okay. But if it has a severe case, the leaves are going to become deformed. And if too many of the leaves are deformed, that's going to weaken the tree because the leaves can't do their job. And so if you have a severe case, then you would want to there's a soil drench that you can buy that is safe, marketed for citrus leaf miners. Make sure it says that on the label. And you want to do that after the plant has flowered and dropped its flowers, because this is a systemic insecticide. So what happens, it's a soil drench, you put it on the soil, then the plant takes up this pesticide and it goes all the way through the plant. So it will kill the leaf miner inside the leaf tissue, but it also, if you have flowers, it gets into flowers, and we know bees love citrus flowers. So if you do go that route, wait until after it's flowered before you put that drench on there. Aphids and scale, we have so you want to control the ants first. So use like ant granules, tanglefoot to keep them out of the tree. Scale, treat it with horticultural oil, which you can don't use Crisco oil. Just go buy stuff labeled horticultural oil. Avoid over fertilizing because that attracts the pests. And also, you may want to plant some flowers to attract some beneficial insects that will eat aphids and scale. Mealybugs. Oh, these things are a pain. So they're kind of white and fluffy looking, also attracted to new growth. So that's why you want to be careful about over fertilizing. Use insecticidal soap, not Dawn dish detergent, and horticultural oil will also get rid of these guys. It basically dissolves their shell and they go away. So Asian citrus psyllid, this is important. This bug, it's from China. It's a vector insect for Huanglongbing citrus greening disease, which has the potential to wipe out California's citrus industry. It's already totally decimated Florida's citrus industry, the billions of dollars of loss in Florida because this disease has hit Florida's citrus. These insects are very tiny. They usually can find them on new growth of leaf petioles. They're hard to see. I mean, I have to get my reading glasses to see them, but they the way you spot them is the way they feed. They have their backside sticking up at like a 45-degree angle. They so the psyllid is all over California. It's been found in a lot of places, but it's a vector insect. So this is the way that the trees get the disease. It's kind of like malaria. I mean, you can have psyllids and not have the disease. Same with malaria. You can get bit by a mosquito, but not get malaria. But you want to limit the number of mosquitoes out there so you don't get malaria or any other mosquito-borne viruses. It's the same thing with this. So now I'll go over that with diseases too, how to spot Huanglongbing. Okay, I found a fat squirrel with bad attitude. This is, I know many people are very fond of squirrels. I'm not. They will totally like eat every fruit off your tree. People say, "Oh, well, you can share with the squirrels," yeah, but they don't want to share with us. So you want to try and discourage them from coming. Don't feed the squirrels. Avoid using poison, just because there's a lot of things that eat squirrels, and we like those things like owls, hawks, bobcats. So we don't want to poison them because that's not good for the critters that eat them. Glue traps, you never ever want to use a glue trap outside. You can use them, indoors, but outside don't ever use it because you're more likely to catch a non-target animal like a little owl or hawks, things like that. So I don't like the glue traps, frankly. Snap traps as well, they can catch non-target animals. So my personal favorite is the electrocution traps because it kills them instantly. It's humane, and it doesn't catch any non-target animals. The electrocution traps are good for rats as well. Although this guy, have you seen the electrocution traps are like a tube, right? I don't know if this guy would fit in the tube. Also, those have-a-heart traps, people trap them and have a heart trap and then drop them off in a field a mile or so away from their house. That's actually illegal to do. So it's not really a humane way to deal with that. Raccoons and possums. Raccoons are really, really smart. So I just gave up on it. You can maybe use an electric fence if you have an enclosed protected area where your trees are, but otherwise, raccoons and possums, I don't know, I just let them go. I know they eat my stuff, but what can I say? There's really not any good way of keeping them out. So diseases, I just want to touch on Huang Long Bing citrus greening disease. It's spread by that Asian citrus psyllid that I showed you a few slides back. It will kill citrus trees. If a tree gets this, there's no cure, there's no treatment, it kills the tree. What you'll see is an asymmetric yellowing of leaves like you see here in this photo. You can see like part of the leaf. One side of the leaf is yellow, the other side is green. And it's more than just one leaf. So if you see that, that's a big sign. You'll have misshapen or asymmetric fruit, like when you cut an orange in half and like the middle membrane is kind of wavy, something that is also a sign that the tree has that disease. It also will make it taste bad. They never sweeten up. And here's the website that has all the current information on this pest, the californiacitrusthreat.org, and they'll go over, they show pictures of the disease and what you can do and phone numbers you can call. So they will set up traps for the psyllid and test your tree. Okay, so frost damage. Don't remove damaged leaves until spring. So if you get frost and your tree, this is for any frost tender tree or any frost tender plant that you have in the ground. If you have, say, the outside layer of leaves is damaged and ugly, leave them. I know you want to take them off, but don't leave them there because they protect the interior of the plant. Wait until spring after the danger of frost is past, then get rid of the ugly leaves, but keep them there until then. Citrus trees, defoliated trees where they lose all their leaves, they may not be dead all the way. They may have just dropped all their leaves. So don't just give up on it and pull it out right away. Just wait until the spring, until the weather warms up, because sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised. It may start putting out new leaves and you saved a tree. Also with frost damage, you can see where the tree may die at the graft, where maybe at the bottom underneath the graft, it may be putting up suckers, but anything above the graft is dead. That means the tree is dead. You would need to take that out. Fruit issues. Thick rind, decreased production, fruit drop, hollowed out fruit, and dry fruit. These are the most common issues. So thick rind can be either excess nitrogen or a phosphorus deficiency. You would want to give it fertilizer. Those two things go hand in hand. Decreased production and fruit drops. So this was a couple of questions asked here. I'm trying to talk faster because I know I'm running out of time. So a lot of trees will go into alternate year bearing, where they basically just take a year off and then they'll produce again the next year. So if you have a ton of fruit and then the next year you don't have hardly anything, it's just taking a year off. It's a natural occurrence. Very young trees will not produce very many fruit as well, just because they're small and not ready. When they flower in the spring, you'll see there's just a ton of flowers on these trees, right? It just smells marvelous and everything, but only a tiny, tiny percentage of those flowers will develop into fruit. The rest will fall off. And of the tiny fruit that you see, only a tiny percentage of those will become big fruit. They will naturally drop a whole bunch of these little baby fruit. Don't put a bird bath or a fountain underneath a citrus tree. It's a giant mess. But just to know that that fruit drop is a natural occurrence. If the tree is otherwise healthy, it's usually just a temporary issue. Or the tree may be root bound and you'll see like where it's not growing, things like that. So hollowed out fruit, that's rats. You have rats because they climb up in the tree and they'll just eat the good stuff out of the tree and you'll see these hollowed out shells. Best thing to do is just like keep a clean garden, pick up your fallen fruit, make sure you have like a rodent proof compost bin. The electrocution traps, once again, work pretty well. There's also rat repellents. I don't know if they work that well. If you have really good citrus, they may not pay attention to your rat repellent. And dried out fruit. Sometimes you'll pick fruit and it's kind of nasty and like kind of rubbery inside. It may be due to a water stress event or freeze damage is a very common occurrence. What happens is the freeze will crack the rind. And you may not see the crack, but it's a microscopic crack in the skin. And then it allows that fruit to dry out. And also, you may have waited too long to harvest. And that's the end. So you can all go to that rabbit hole, use the ANR website. It's University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. California Citrus Threat, that is where you can learn about Huanglong Bing citrus greening disease. And then the California Citrus Growers website also has quite a lot of good information about growing citrus. So I hope I answered at least some people's questions.
Well, speaking of questions, Laura, we have so many. I'm afraid you're going to have to do another show next year to get to everything that's been
Oh
asked.
boy.
But just a few, I just want to cherry pick, if I can mix the metaphor, a couple that haven't really been talked about. Anthony wants to know, is there anything to help fruit get sweeter, or do you just let nature take its course? Have extremely bitter.
I think if you have like really hot weather will make your fruit sweeter. If it's oranges and fruit that's supposed to be sweet, the
Yeah,
hot weather will make the citrus sweet enough. So I don't know how you do that, but
fair enough.
if you have a hot summer, that look forward
Well,
to good fruit.
the plus side of global warming, we don't know.
I
Anyway,
guess.
moving on. You have quite a few questions about potted citrus. Is there
Oh, okay.
anything just generally to talk about there?
Okay, well, if you're living in an area that is subject to frost, you can plant your citrus in a pot. Make sure you put the pot in a dolly before you put the soil and the plant in there. Yeah, made that mistake once, only once. Because it's going to be really heavy. But you want to get like a nice pot that you can put on a dolly, and then when it cold weather comes, you can tuck it in your garage for the cold times, and or
What
bring
about
it in at night.
for renter? We have a couple questions for renters who might just have a patio or a balcony. Any suggestions
Okay.
there?
Yeah, you can just bring it close to the house or and cover it if it's in a frosty area. If it's not, it may not do well in a balcony. It has to get a lot of sun.
Mhm.
So make sure you're getting, at least 6 hours of full sun before you go and invest in a tree and stuff.
Sounds
But
good.
but yeah, you can they can be grown in pots. They just won't get very big, but they will produce. And
I
I
have
would recommend like kumquats do really well in containers. Um, Also the tangerines, we've had luck with those in containers as well.
tangerines and
Yeah.
good. Speaking of different types of citrus, Carol wants to know, she's got one of every type of citrus. You've covered nutrients, but are there requirements different for different citrus in terms of nutrients?
Oh, well, not so much that you would have to worry about it. I mean, if you're a professional grower and you know, then you would want to know about like what nutrient deficiencies look like and stuff. But as far as an average homeowner, just the citrus food should have you covered for all the citrus and avocados.
Well, you guys, we are at the end of our time. I know there are so many more questions. Laura, will you come back next year and do a part 2 on citrus for us, please?
Sure,
That sounds good.
sure. Yeah, if you could, I don't know if you're able to save the questions and send them to me, but
Absolutely.
so I
We
can put
have
them in
them
my
in a
column.
transcript, and we'll have you do that in your column and do another show on it as well. I hope that's okay, folks.
Yeah. Plus, it
Well,
gives me a fodder for my column. So
oh my gosh, you have more than enough. We have so many questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everything in our time, but
yeah.
that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. And
All
also
right.
shout out to Julie Corlett, our magician behind the scenes who makes everything run. And
Yeah.
for everybody, we hope to see you for more garden party next year.
All righty.
Meanwhile, folks, please join us again this Friday for Bookish with well-known authors, which this time includes famed prosecutor Marsha Clark with her newest release.
Ah,
And you can register for all of our upcoming programs and catch up on others you might have missed. All of the old garden parties are there, folks. Go to scng.com/virtual events And if you'd like to share your thoughts from today, or if you have additional questions for Laura, please email us at events@scng.com. And hey, a final reminder, if you aren't a subscriber, please give us a call at 877-469-6133. Become a stakeholder in local journalism and help make programs like this one possible. So thanks again for your support. Happy gardening, everybody. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next time.